The Holy Gospel according to St. Matthew, the 13th chapter. Jesus put before the crowds another parable. The kingdom of heaven may be compared to someone who sowed good seed in his field. But while everybody was asleep, an enemy came and sowed weeds amongst the wheat, and then went away. So when the plants came up and bore grain, then the weeds appeared as well. And the slaves of the householder came and said to him, "Master, did you not sow good seed in your field? Where then did these weeds come from?" He answered, "An enemy has done this." The slaves said to him, "Then do you want us to go out and gather them?" But the master replied, "No, for in gathering the weeds you would uproot the wheat along with them. Let both of them grow together until the harvest. And at harvest time I will tell the reapers, collect the weeds first, and bind them in bundles to be burned, but gather the wheat into my barn." Then he left the crowds and went into the house. And his disciples approached Jesus, saying, "Explain to us the parable of the weeds of the field." And Jesus answered, "The one who sows the good seed is the Son of Man. The field itself is the world, and the good seed are all the children of the kingdom. The weeds are the children of the evil one, and the enemy who sowed them is the devil. The harvest is the end of the age, and the reapers are the angels. Just as the weeds are collected and burned up with fire, so it will be at the end of the age. The Son of Man will send his angels, and they will collect out of his kingdom all causes of sin and all evildoers. And they will throw them into the furnace of fire, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Then the righteous will shine like the sun in the kingdom of their Father. Let anyone with ears listen." This is the gospel of the Lord. You may be seated. It would be really easy with a gospel such as this to do some kind of an end times sermon. Indeed, some of my colleagues around the world probably are doing that this weekend. But the truth is that we are called to discuss and preach those things that we feel the Holy Spirit put in our heart. And this week, as I looked over this gospel several times, I kept coming back to the idea of how we are all tangled together, rooted in the earth and the creation together in a way that if any one person is plucked out, it damages the whole family of God's children. Think about that for just a moment. You know, we have a tendency in life to kind of pick and choose the people that we are, quote, okay with. We have a tendency to judge. We have a tendency sometimes to even ignore certain people and push them as far off to the margins as we possibly can. And yet, if we read this parable, we begin to realize that when we try to remove anyone from the garden that is the earth, we always run the risk of harming the innocent and the good. It isn't our place, as the master says to his workers, it is not our place to just pull the weeds out at the risk of damaging that which is already here and is good. That is not what we are called to do. So think about what it was like for those workers. They spent the remainder of that year tending to both the wheat and the weeds, making sure that everything grew well, so that the wheat, the fruitful plants, would always be protected. You know, it's kind of an interesting concept if you think about it. Truthfully, and we actually saw this week, we just saw this yesterday, when storms hit, plants are safer when their roots are all entangled with other plants. So it is beneficial to have those weeds there mixed in. It's also beneficial because at some level, when the weeds die, they provide nutrients into the soil for the good plants. This is Farming 101. I have friends that are farmers. The point being that, you know, our first inclination when we see a weed in the yard is to just go over and pluck it. Our first inclination when we see people somewhere within our community that we don't like, that we don't trust, is to push them out to the margins, away from everything that is good. And yet, here is Jesus saying to us, don't do that. Part of the problem is this. Who are we to judge what is good and fruitful versus what is bad and wasteful? I have a very good friend. His name is Vince Blackfox. He was a seminary student with me. He's a member of the Cherokee tribe. He lives down in Oklahoma now, obviously Native American. And one of the things he said to me years ago when we were in seminary together, we were having lunch, and I said, I got to go home and cut the grass and weed the garden. And he looked at me and he goes, you are so foolish. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, all of you people from the suburbs, you got to have perfect lawns. You got to pick which plant can grow and which one can't, as if some came from God and others didn't. You decide how tall they should be and what shape they should be, as if they're yours, not God's. He said, you don't understand the first thing about God's creation. Of course, I looked at him and I said, yes, but my neighbors would have an issue. And I would lose my house if I did not take care of. And he goes, I understand that, but you're still wrong. It really isn't our place to judge, is it? What we see in people may not be the full truth. Sometimes we see only what we want to see in people. Sometimes we get it completely wrong. We assume something about people that isn't even remotely close to the truth. So who are we to choose who stays and who goes? Who are we to choose who gets pushed out to the margins and who stays in the mainstream garden? It's not our place. We're really not that good at it. If you think about it, every one of us in this room at some point or another, no matter how young or old we are, has already misjudged someone. Some of the people I grew up with, who I am now Facebook friends with, this is what's cool about Facebook, is you end up seeing who people are today and kind of comparing that to what you thought they were going to be. And some of the people, honestly, that I grew up with that sometimes I thought, holy cow, I am so happy to not be in communication with this person anymore, are some of the best people as adults that I see on Facebook. I misjudged them. We all do it. So that is the point of this gospel, of this parable. It's not our place to judge what is good and what should be wasted. By the way, some of the largest weeds you see around town are also some of the most beautiful when they flower. It's not our place to judge. It's not our place to choose who gets to be in the mainstream and who should be pushed out to the margins and separated out. It's not our place to do that. So really, the main point is this. We are to all share the space together with everyone. No exceptions. Jesus made that clear in the parable. No one gets plucked out of our doing. It's God's responsibility, not ours. We make space for literally everyone. That may not always be easy. But remember something. Somewhere is a person who's making space for you. Somewhere is a person that's making space for me. Somebody out there somewhere wants to judge us. Really wants to judge us as individuals and as a community. The other day I got referred to on Facebook as an old clergy member who doesn't understand the first thing about young people by somebody who knows nothing about me. The only thing they knew about me was my age. But they wanted desperately to judge me because I'm a pastor in a church and they have an issue with the church. Somewhere is somebody that makes space for us. We need to make space for others. All are welcome. Literally, all are welcome. Make space for all people. Thanks be to God. Amen.